So one setup per session. This morning I was watching the London Open and I did not really see an setup, proper setup, but it actually developed to be a good setup. So if I look at a higher time frame, we have this 4 hour bearish FEG holding price down. We have Asia high, the blue line. And what you could see at the London Open is that it tagged a few of the lows, and it did for ES as well, but there was not like a clear low taken like this 4 hour low from yesterday. So I was zooming in. So in itself, I was not really interested in a setup. I will just do the replay button, since this is all just hindsight knowledge. So we have this level taken, which is in itself, it could be interesting. You know, you have this fair value gap and some levels here, and I think they call it the rounded edges, which is always interesting to have a look, because there is like this path with generated liquidity, which is once you get up to these levels are easy to get taken out. So what happens? I was watching the 1 minute, and on the 1 minute, let's see if I can make this a little bit easier for myself. So I was watching on the 1 minute, and you could see a teeny tiny SMT. So in itself, it's not something I would trade off of. You could see here there was, I think they were equal lows instead of a lower low. So what I do immediately see and notice is that we have an order block here, which can turn into a breaker block. And what we have this one here as well for ES. And what I've noticed is I see some additional confluence for the importance of a level if I can, let's say, drag the breaker level or the order block to the left and see that it acted as support. So for ES, for NQ, it didn't really hit it, so I'm just going to leave it here. But then you can see support, it bounces, that interacts with the level again, creates the block, sells off, and then uses it now as resistance. So this is a breaker block in the making, potentially. So let's see what happens. Then suddenly we get this burst through, and the moment you get a proper close above, like an earlier close, and it's properly above the breaker level, then it's interesting to consider a potential long. But seeing the price action and the downwards momentum, you could also say, okay, I'll just do nothing at the moment and see how this develops. Because when you create such a huge fair value gap, it can also just drop all the way back. And then you get a really wide stop loss, so the RR is not there. I think this also just, if you look at this manipulation, let's call it manipulation, then it looks like the unicorn model. So let's see what happens. Price consolidates, and this could be a level where you say, hey, this could be interesting to consider a long up to this level. Because what are my TPs? My first TP would be probably here or somewhere in this vicinity. I mentioned yesterday that the moment I really stretch my TP up to the highest wick, it tends to move in that direction, then sells off until in the end it will tag it. And then we have two more levels here. So we have our levels. So this could be an interesting place to take a long, but still, then you could have like, for me it would be a risky stop loss to just have it floating somewhere in the middle of this FEG, but you could assume that the breaker should hold targeting this level, which is very decent RR. So you could say, okay, I'm going to widen my stop a little bit or make it a flexible stop loss, like a soft stop loss instead of a hard stop loss. Okay, so price bounce and you say, oh wow, this is good. but then it sells off again. And I also keep an eye on ES. It's doing more or less the same, so it's trading in sync, which I think is good for the setup. And then it drops. And what it does here is interesting now. So you're in the long, but it now forms within the same breaker block, because you don't want to see a close below the breaker block, or that would be an invalidation of the long. You see a SMT being formed, which says, ES says, okay, let's go up. And this wick and Q saying, oh, I need to get some liquidity here before moving up. And I think this, once you get this wick and a close up to this level, that is your ideal, like highest probability long. So you could take a long here, move your stop loss either below the wick, because you don't want price to drop down again, because then it's going to roll over. You can also just place it at the lower end of the breaker, target the first TP, and then maybe leave a runner for the rest. So let's just press play, because it's all insight. I know it's going to happen, but I'm also just trying to train myself what is the highest probability setup. So now you did, by the way, have the opportunity to scale or place your entry at the breaker block, but of course you're not for sure, because it can also just move away, just like it did for ES. So then market opening or just placing your limit. So this is your first TP hit, and then it starts moving, right? Second TP hit, and then you have to be wary of the fact that price can correct a little bit. So you can trail your stop loss, or just leave the runner and pray to the market gods that it will move to the expected TP. And I think we're close to. So now it drops. Okay, so this is not. You don't want to get stuck in this PA. So likely it's going to move up again, but this is just nasty PA to get caught in. And while I'm seeing this PA develop, yeah. So this is not. So then it's best just to go for the quick target and then get out of the trade. So that's a lovely setup, I think. In the end, I think if your TP was here, yeah, wow, you have a 3R trade. That's just beautiful. No need to hold it any longer. If you get 3R in, what is this, like 10 minutes, then you have done a beautiful trade. There is no way or no reason to hold it on for any longer, especially seeing the chop that occurred afterwards. So this was your first setup, which was also a 3R trade, but higher risk, because you don't know what price will do once it gets here. You could get stopped out, so then you need to be mentally, emotionally prepared to maybe re-enter if this occurs, but then with the wick lower hitting your stop loss, or you wait for the best setup, the highest probability to take the long.